The concept of fallen angels has captivated imaginations for centuries. These celestial beings, who chose to defy divine order, represent a spiritual mystery that bridges ancient lore with profound themes of rebellion, judgment, and redemption. Most of us are familiar with the broader story of these rebellious entities. Yet, beyond the well-known names, one figure emerges as especially intriguing: Azazel. His tale is woven into both Jewish and Christian traditions, yet remains largely hidden, lurking in ancient texts that many haven't explored. While he doesn't frequently appear in the traditional Bible, the impact of Azazel's story echoes through the ages, painting a vivid portrait of temptation, forbidden knowledge, and the spiritual dangers that come when humanity reaches beyond its bounds. To truly understand the mysterious legacy of Azazel, we need to venture beyond the surface of canonical scripture into ancient texts that some have forgotten or overlooked. Let go of any preconceived notions. We'll delve deep into Azazel's tale, a story that has shaped humanity's spiritual landscape in ways few fully realize. To truly understand Azazel's role in the grand cosmic narrative, we must start by exploring the broader story of the fallen angels as a whole. This story, which originates in Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4, offers an introduction to these celestial beings and their interactions with humanity. The passage describes how the sons of God, commonly interpreted by scholars as a reference to angelic beings, saw that human daughters were beautiful and chose them as wives. From these unions came forth a group known as the Nephilim, who were described as mighty men of old and men of renown. These giants and warriors quickly made their mark, but they also carried the influence and traits of their angelic ancestry, creating a new form of life that was neither fully human nor fully divine. This was a monumental act of defiance. These angels, once charged with serving as protectors and messengers of God, willingly left their heavenly stations to pursue their own desires among mortals. The text invites us to consider the depth of this betrayal. These beings were not simply disobedient servants, but divine creatures who had beheld God's presence, understood his purpose, and still chose to abandon their roles for their own ends. This defiance raises profound questions. What would drive such powerful entities to abandon the divine order, to reject the very creator they once served? What could they possibly hope to gain from entering the human realm, where their powers, though awe-inspiring to mortals, represented a mere shadow of the spiritual gifts they had in God's presence? These questions set the stage for a deeper understanding of the fallen angels' motivations and the dire consequences of their actions. The Book of Enoch provides a broader perspective on this tale, expanding upon what is suggested in Genesis. This ancient text holds a significant place in Jewish history, though it is not part of the traditional biblical canon. The Book of Enoch, while often seen as apocryphal, was nonetheless widely respected in early Jewish and Christian communities. Its account of the Watchers, the angels who chose to rebel against God's plan, adds depth to the Genesis narrative, shedding light on the events and motivations that led these celestial beings to defy their creator. In the New Testament, Jude 1 verses 14 to 15 refers to the prophecies of Enoch, the seventh from Adam, who foresaw God's judgment upon all ungodliness, including that of the fallen angels. This reference suggests that early Christians valued the Book of Enoch as a source of insight into the spiritual realm, particularly concerning the fallen angels' actions and the divine repercussions that followed. Within the Book of Enoch, Azazel emerges as a particularly prominent figure among the rebellious Watchers. Unlike many of his fellow angels, whose shared knowledge was limited to basic skills like astrology, survival tactics, and crafts, Azazel took it upon himself to impart far more dangerous knowledge. His teachings were not mere survival tools. They were weapons of destruction and instruments of temptation that would lead humanity down a dark path. Azazel's influence was pervasive, touching upon every facet of life, from war and violence to vanity and seduction. He introduced the art of metalworking, instructing humans on how to create swords, knives, shields, and armor. But his knowledge extended beyond warfare. He also revealed the secrets of cosmetics, teaching people to alter their appearances, an act that in the ancient context symbolized vanity, allure, and an obsession with outward beauty over inner virtue. To understand the implications of Azazel's actions, one must consider the world before his influence. Human societies, although primitive, were largely focused on survival, spirituality, and communal harmony. Yet with the introduction of weaponry, warfare erupted on a scale previously unimaginable. Entire communities began to splinter, their members turning against one another, driven by envy, pride, and the thirst for power. Azazel's teachings were not merely knowledge but catalysts for social upheaval. War and violence became commonplace, disrupting any semblance of peace or cooperation among communities. Imagine the shock and fear that gripped humanity as people who once lived side by side as neighbors found themselves pitted against each other, driven by greed and the lure of power that Azazel's teachings had planted in their hearts. Azazel's impact went beyond warfare. His influence on human vanity and desire transformed society on a personal level. By introducing cosmetics, Azazel encouraged people to prioritize appearance over substance, pushing them to focus on the superficial rather than the spiritual. This wasn't simply a trend or harmless embellishment. In ancient times, cosmetics represented something deeper. They embodied vanity, seduction, and a shift in values. People who had once sought inner purity and closeness to God began to fixate on physical beauty, status, and allure. In the Book of Enoch, Azazel's teachings on cosmetics are seen as a way to lead people into temptation, to place value on what is fleeting and external rather than what is eternal and divine. This focus on outward beauty fed into a cycle of self-centeredness, jealousy, and desire, distancing humanity from God's teachings and driving them further into moral decay. The Bible consistently warns against superficial values, stressing the importance of purity and humility. 1 Samuel 16 verse 7 is a reminder of this, stating, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Yet, through Azazel's influence, society's values began to shift. People became increasingly captivated by physical beauty, wealth, and status, drifting further from God's focus on inner virtues. The fascination with outward appearance and societal rank was not merely a new cultural trend but represented a fundamental shift in priorities, a rebellion against the Creator's call to humility and devotion. Azazel's influence marked a turning point, leading humanity away from spiritual purity and closer to a life marked by pride, self-interest, and rebellion. The consequences of Azazel's actions, combined with those of his fellow fallen angels, were profound. The world descended into chaos and violence, culminating in one of the most significant events in biblical history, the Great Flood. Genesis 6 verse 5 captures God's sorrow and frustration, stating, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." The corruption spread by the fallen angels, especially Azazel, permeated human life so thoroughly that God decided to cleanse the earth, allowing humanity to begin anew. The flood was not just an act of divine judgment, but a response to the overwhelming spread of violence, pride, and vanity that had overtaken the world. Azazel's influence had left a lasting impact, marking a dark chapter in human history, a legacy of sin and corruption that, in many ways, remains relatable in modern times. But what became of Azazel and his fellow fallen angels after they had unleashed such corruption? The Book of Enoch offers a vivid description of their punishment, illustrating a profound and symbolic justice. In response to their rebellion, God commanded the archangels to bind Azazel and cast him into a pit in the desert, a desolate place where he would be imprisoned until the final judgment. Enoch 10:4-6 describes this punishment with stark imagery. "Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, and place him therein, and cover him with darkness." This confinement beneath jagged rocks represents more than just personal punishment. It serves as a reminder of the high cost of defying God's will and a protective measure for humanity, ensuring Azazel's influence could no longer spread unchecked. This theme of separation as a response to sin resonates throughout the Bible. Just as God cast Azazel into darkness, Jesus describes a similar fate for the unrighteous in Matthew 25 verse 41, where he says, "Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels.'" Azazel's fate illustrates the severe consequences of rebellion, serving as a stark symbol of divine justice. His banishment into darkness was a profound response to his influence over humanity, cutting off his ability to lead them astray any further. In this way, God's judgment on Azazel was both a punishment and a safeguard, highlighting the protective aspect of divine justice. Azazel's story also finds an interesting connection with the ritual of the Day of Atonement described in Leviticus 16. This ritual involved two goats, one to be sacrificed as a sin offering and another, the scapegoat, which was designated for Azazel. This scapegoat, symbolically bearing the sins of the community, would be led into the wilderness, far from the people. In a powerful act of symbolic cleansing, the community's sins were cast away through the scapegoat, similar to how Azazel was cast into darkness to limit his influence over humanity. This ritual emphasized both forgiveness and the need to remove sin, aligning with the symbolic role Azazel came to represent, a being so corrupted that he had to be removed from humanity to preserve the community's purity. The Bible echoes this theme of cleansing and forgiveness in passages like Psalm 103 verse 12, which says, "As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us." The scapegoat's journey into the wilderness illustrated not only forgiveness but also the removal of sin, ensuring that it would be out of reach for those seeking closeness to God. The ritual's connection to Azazel underscores the idea that sin, symbolized by his influence, must be cast away to maintain purity. This is a reminder that God not only forgives but actively works to protect his people from the consequences of sin. Azazel's story, then, is not just an ancient tale but a cautionary reminder for modern readers. It highlights the dangers of pride, vanity, and rebellion, warning us against the temptation to seek power and knowledge outside of God's will. In Jude 1 verse 6, we're reminded that the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. Azazel's fall, along with that of the other angels, teaches us that even those closest to God are not beyond accountability. Their rebellion serves as a warning that disobedience to God's order carries severe consequences. The story of Azazel challenges us to examine our own values, to consider whether we prioritize humility, obedience, and spiritual growth over self-centered desires and superficial appearances. As 1 Peter 5 verse 5 reminds us, God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. The fall of the angels emphasizes the dangers of pride and the importance of living in alignment with God's design. Azazel's story is a timeless reminder of the consequences of turning away from God's will, a story that resonates in our own struggles with vanity, self-interest, and the temptation to prioritize personal desires over spiritual integrity. Ultimately, the tale of Azazel calls us to live a life rooted in humility, obedience, and closeness to God. Through Jesus, we find redemption and forgiveness, providing us a path away from the darkness of rebellion. James 4 verses 7 to 8 encourages us, "Submit yourselves, then, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you." This story reminds us of the importance of walking with God, guided by his wisdom, and protected from the influences that lead us astray. Azazel's fate serves as a warning, but also as an invitation to pursue a life marked by faithfulness, humility, and unwavering devotion to God's truth. Thank you for joining me on this exploration into biblical history. If this journey has sparked your curiosity and deepened your understanding, I invite you to like, subscribe, and join us for more discussions that reveal the hidden facets of ancient texts and the timeless messages they hold for us all.